Mr. Mayor. Let's pray together. Be good to us, dear Lord, for the sea is so wide and our boat is so small, but our efforts are sincere as we hope to serve our neighbors here. Our well-meaning efforts might even be brave, though sometimes off the mark. So guide our steps, we pray, that we might make love our true aim and be good to us as we strive to be good to you by being good to others. In your name, amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Pastor Matt. Okay. Let's move on to reading material. Council, you should have been provided your agenda and packet, and I hope you've been able to read that. Next, we'll move on to public comment. Mayor Pro Tem, would you please provide the guidelines for public comment?
The council shall provide at least one period for public comment per month during a regular meeting unless no regular meeting is held that month. Any individual or group who wishes to address the council shall inform the town clerk anytime prior to the start of the meeting and provide their name, address, and subject matter about which they wish to speak. Person must be present if they wish to address the council. Comments should be limited to 5 minutes per speaker. Open forum is not intended to require council or staff to answer impromptu questions. Speakers will address all comments to the entire council as a whole and not one individual member. Discussions between speakers and the audience will not be permitted. Speakers will maintain decorum at all times. Speakers are expected to be courteous and respectful at all times, regardless of who occupies the council chairs. These guidelines will help ensure that a safe and productive meeting is held, and all those wishing to address the council will be afforded the opportunity.
Thank you. Next, I would like to invite, first of all, Ms. Tanya Stevenson from our Burke County Chamber of Commerce. I think she has something big to talk about.
It is big. Thank you, Mayor, Council, Manager, Clerk, for having me, letting me speak tonight on behalf of our big event coming up. As most of you know, for the past 4 years, we at the Chamber have proudly organized our community litter sweep. One of the most important things we've learned from this is that people in our community genuinely want to do good. However, not everyone is physically able to get out and pick up litter, and others feel called to serve in many different ways. So we also discovered when the effort was limited to a single week that many willing participants were simply unavailable due to vacations, business demands, or scheduling conflicts. So this year, after thoughtful discussions, we are expanding and enhancing the litter sweep into something bigger and more inclusive. So we are launching the BIG Challenge, the BIG Challenge, which stands for the Burke Impact Group Challenge, and it will run the entire month of April. This expanded format allows more people to participate in ways that match their abilities, interests, and schedules. Of course, we still welcome and encourage anyone who wants to do the traditional litter pickup efforts, and we still have all the supplies if they need it. But we are also inviting groups to make an impact in other meaningful ways, whether it's hosting a baby shower to support organizations that serve new mothers, sewing blankets for hospice patients, helping to build a habitat home, constructing an accessibility ramp, or undertaking other service projects that strengthen our community. The goal of the BIG Challenge is simple: to give everyone in Burke County an opportunity to make a difference and to ensure that every act of service, large or small, is seen, valued, and celebrated. We're excited about this broader reach this initiative will have, and grateful for your support in helping us mobilize Burke County into doing big things in the month of April. Thank you for your time.
Awesome. Stand right there. I've
I'll
got something
stand
else
right here.
coming your way. By proclamation, declaring the month of April as Town of Valdese Chamber of Commerce's Burke Impact Group Big Challenge Month. Whereas the Burke Impact Group Big Challenge, led by Burke County Chamber of Commerce, builds upon the success of the community's annual litter sweep efforts conducted over the past 4 years. And whereas this expanded month-long initiative provides increased opportunities for residents, businesses, civic groups, and organizations throughout Burke County to participate in a meaningful community improvement activities. And whereas Big Challenge is intentionally designed to be inclusive of the individuals of all ages and physical abilities by offering a variety of ways to serve beyond the traditional litter pickup. And whereas these activities may include beautification projects, volunteer service, environmental stewardship, and other acts that strengthen community pride and engagement. And whereas the Burke County Chamber of Commerce continues to demonstrate leadership in fostering partnerships that promote cleaner, more connected, and more vibrant community. And whereas Burke Impact Group Challenge encourages citizens to take collective ownership in preserving the natural beauty and quality of life in Burke County. Now therefore be it proclaimed, I, Mayor Keith Hoffman, and the Town of Valdese Town Council do hereby designate the month of April 2026 as the Burke County Chamber of Commerce's Burke Impact Challenge Month, and encourage all residents, businesses, schools, faith-based organizations, and community groups to participate in activities that make a positive impact throughout our county.
Thank you all.
Okay. First on the list, who is on the speaker list, Dr. Robert Stevenson. Please come forward.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, for the opportunity to speak. I'm going to try to speak on 2 topics in 5 minutes. First is to stress the immediate need for a new and properly built public safety complex in Valdese. The present arrangements with the part of Town Hall as police station and the fire department being operated from a trailer was a terrible idea and fails to meet most required codes for both the fire and the police. The previous regime dropped the ball and even chased such ridiculous options as Lovelady Fire Department taking over Valdese Fire and the county taking over the police duties. These were totally unworkable ideas and were recognized in the election by a landslide vote for change. If we have gone ahead with the original plan of 4 years ago, we could have built the fire department and the police department for much less money, but that's water under the bridge at this point. I encourage the present town council to pursue the building of the new public safety building as quickly as possible. Time is money. As a 15-year board member in the Lovelady Fire Department, which is now building a new fire department, I strongly recommend following things for consideration. Number 1, realize and plan for the need up to 50 years forward. Additions and remodels will cost much more in the future. Number 2, very important, let the firemen and policemen help with suggestions on the layout plans. They know what is needed on a daily basis to provide Valdese with excellent services and are much more aware of present codes that must be met. Number 3, research several builders and lenders for the best deals and consider information available from others who have done the same process. The citizens of Valdese need and deserve properly designed and built facilities for our fire and police department, which will afford us with the safest environment and best services possible. Nothing is free or even cheap these days, but delaying the process will just accentuate the problem. But the many newly built and planned homes in the future in Valdese will increase the tax revenue yearly and aid in the affordability of this much-needed project. Concern number 2, I want to urge the council to think long and hard before considering elimination of fluoride in our water, as well as surrounding communities that we provide water for. Being a dentist that worked 2 years for the North Carolina Public Health Service and 40 years in private practice, I urge you to study all the scientific data available and the results obtained by water fluoridation as far as caries reduction in especially children, but applicable to adults also. Dr. Sanders and Dr. Slade both cite, quote, that in the counties where at least 75% of the population was served with fluoridated water, children experience less dental decay than children in counties with lower fluoridation, regardless of their household income. Simply put, there is no scientific evidence to support the removal of fluoride from the water upon hearing of this proposal just to save money. I reached out to a friend and colleague, Scott Edson, who has really recently retired from being the head of the operative department at UNC Dental School in Chapel Hill. He stated that at the dental school as well as the North Carolina Public Health Service strongly recommend fluoridation of public water and that the results speak for themselves. He equated the removal of fluoride to refusing the measles vaccine. There is a difference in ingested fluoride and topically applied fluoride. Both are important, but the ingested fluoride strengthens the teeth during their formation. The topical fluoride strengthens the outer layer of enamel, but the success of a topical fluoride depends on the time in contact with the teeth. This removal of fluoride from the water proposal could well affect whether people want to move to Valdese, as well as the backlash from other communities we charge for our water. I am just touching the surface of the repercussions to overall public health efforts. Our citizens, regardless of income, deserve to get the advantage of water fluoridation for improved dental health. Do not vote on this important issue without studying the facts first. This is about community health, not just money. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. George Henney. Did I pronounce that right?
That's good.
How do you pronounce it?
Penny.
Henney, I did. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is George F. Henney Jr., and I live in Valdese. I have a concern for the upcoming midterm election this November. While not a presidential year, we do have a Senate election as well as representatives and several local positions being contested. I think under the present circumstances that there is going to be a large turnout for this election. And while I intend to vote early, I am concerned about one of our polling places here in town. I do not think that the splash pad building next to the recreation center will be adequate. While the building itself seems fine, I think the lack of adequate parking will be a deterrent for people wishing to vote there on election day. There are only about 10 spaces for parking in front of the building, and half of those will be needed for people who will need a ballot brought out to them. There is a grassy knoll near the lot, but would everyone want to go there to park? There are about 10 spaces at the back of the building, but people would have to walk a block to get to the entrance of the polling site. I understand why the splash pad has replaced the town hall as a polling site. And I could be wrong about the number of people I believe will be voting at the splash pad on election day. But I think the voting site should be moved to the Valdese Recreation Center for the upcoming midterm election. In speaking with the director of the Burke County Board of Elections, I understand that there would be some complications to trying to change the polling site. But we have 6 months to notify people if a change should be approved. There is a handicapped ramp at the rec center. A person could be placed at the splash pad to direct people. Concern for people maneuvering from the parking area to the center could be handled by a crossing guard. There is adequate parking at the rec center, and while it would disrupt the recreation department to do this, I believe that providing a place for citizens to conveniently vote is worth the effort. Other concerns may be voiced, and solutions might be needed, but I humbly believe my proposal should be considered. Thank you for listening, and Jessica has a copy of what I just read.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. One more addition that I want to bring to your attention. This is on the pool dome update. Mr. Dave Anderson, would you come forward and give us an update, please?
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, Attorney Bo. I am pleased to announce that we received our certificate of occupancy this afternoon for the dome, and we will resume swimming Wednesday afternoon at 3:30 in the afternoon for our first session. We will post the more complete schedule on the Town of Valdese Facebook page and on the Town of Valdese websites in the coming days. So we're excited to be able to have that. We appreciate everybody's effort. It was a truly team effort by the entire staff here and all of our part-time staff as well to get this going. So thank you, everybody, and we're excited to get in the pool again.
Thank you. Thank you. Item number 6, consent agenda. Are there any items you wish council to discuss?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to take item C, resolution for fluoride removal, water treatment plant process off the consent agenda.
Very well. Without objection. Also, I'd like to bring to the council's attention item F, call for public hearing, text amendment for electronic message signage ordinance, Staff has requested the removal of this item from consent agenda so additional regulatory changes to this electronic message sign ordinance can be reviewed. Staff has advised the revised text amendment will be brought back to the planning board and then returned to council after that recommendation. With those two off the consent agenda, I would like to go back and ask for a motion for approval for the consent agenda on the remaining items A, B, D, E, and G.
Make a motion to approve those agenda items.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, the approval of resolution for fluoride removal. Ms. Lohman.
Okay, Mr. Weichel?
All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, Attorney Swanson. So, I want to be very clear before we start into this. This item is not presented from a political standpoint. So I fully understand there's a wide range of opinions on fluoride out there, and staff is supportive of whatever direction that council decides to take. But as staff, we were tasked with identifying a cost-saving measure in the water fund to assist in keeping future necessary water rate increases minimal. And this is challenging because we're bound by quite a few state mandated regulations that require expensive chemicals and processes just to provide clean water. However, we did identify one process that can help with this by removing the voluntary addition of fluoride. I mentioned voluntary because this chemical is not required by the state. It would reduce the need from double-digit percentage increases down to single digits in the water fund, which really impacts all water users. And this is strictly a financial and operational item for discussion. It's not about whether the fluoride is good for you or bad for you. It's about the most financial, responsibly way that the town can operate its water system. So at the end of the day, we want to make sure we're providing safe, compliant drinking water at the most cost-effective way for our customers. But why is this being brought forward now? Why at this time? Well, the reason is because fluoride, as I mentioned, is not required by the state, and has been working through both our short-term operating budget and our long-term capital planning. This stood out as a significant cost driver that was worth evaluating. So as I outlined in the memo, currently we're budgeting around $16,000 a year just for the chemical itself. That doesn't include the equipment, the safety measures, and the long-term system impacts that it takes on the water plant. But it becomes even more important when you look at the bigger picture. We have major upcoming investments at the water treatment plant. We've been talking about these upgrades that we've been planning. We're getting ready to go out for bid for that soon, and so this plays a factor into that. So the fluoride is not just an operational cost every year, it also affects how we design and fund upcoming improvements, including chemical storage and the facility layout. By removing the fluoride, it would allow us to repurpose existing infrastructure, improve safety conditions for our staff, and free up financial capacity for other state-mandated treatment processes. If we do keep fluoride in place, it will directly impact the financial resources available for other larger capital needs, impacting the need for revenues through these rate increases that we talk about every year. And an easy way to keep it in mind is that every dollar that we allocate toward a treatment process, whether that's voluntary or state mandated, is a dollar that puts upward pressure on future water rates and ultimately impacts our ratepayers. So this resolution that you have before you tonight is simply identifying a process we can control that can control costs to keep future rates as minimal as possible now and going forward in the future. Now, I do want to acknowledge that the memo that we put in the agenda packet did fail to communicate an important detail, and I left that out. But do you remember a few moments ago I mentioned whether the current process of providing fluoride is the most financially responsible way for the town to provide that benefit? Well, to help alleviate that concern about maintaining access to fluoride for those who do want it and do need it, there is a much more cost-effective alternative. Rather than injecting it into the entire water supply, the town could provide, at no cost, a monthly supply of fluoride rinse. This would be available at Town Hall for any customer who would want it. They would just pick up their monthly supply when they pay their water bill, or whenever they're around, they can get their supply. A single 1 liter bottle can serve about 3 people for a month when used daily as directed on the label. And this approach would give residents a choice of whether they want to use fluoride or not, while significantly reducing our system-wide costs in the process. So there is no regulatory requirement to provide fluoride, but the question is simply whether this is a service the town wants to continue funding at the system-wide level, or do we pursue a more cost-effective way to meet that need? So in a moment, Mr. Mosley, engineer with McGill Associates, will walk us through the actual technical and facility impacts this has on the plant. I kind of touched on those costs a little bit, but he has some actual numbers and how that's going to tie into our upgrade costs. But I did want to share a few photos at the actual plant of our current fluoride system that we have out there now. This is the tank, the outside tank that holds the fluoride. These are patches that have been going on over the years. This tank is going to need replaced. This is part of the process. We're going to talk in a little bit. But this currently, we got to keep this thing from leaking out this highly corrosive chemical around it. What happens is it starts to eat at the concrete. It eats the piping around the tank, and not just the feed lines that go to the fluoride into the plant process, but also the other tanks and other chemicals around it. And these are just a few of the photos that does what it does to the concrete. So these are the costs, what I was talking about, not just the chemical, but the equipment, the infrastructure around this plant layout for this product. So just want to bring those to your attention, and we'll now invite RJ up here.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all this evening. And as Bo said, I'll limit my comments tonight to the technical aspects as the engineer designing the project here and the rulemaking that is enforceable upon the town as the water system owner by the EPA and by the state. So as we think about that, Bo mentioned a time or two the state regulates. Ultimately, all of the regulations for public water systems is derived from the EPA at the federal level. And then they delegate those responsibilities for enforcement of those rules to the state agencies. So when we use that terminology, understand that there are certain federal requirements that do apply, and then there are certain state requirements which may go above and beyond. In the case of fluoride in particular, however, it is not really above and beyond anything that the EPA requires. And so, in fact, the EPA does not require a public water system to add fluoride to the drinking water supply. And so, in that freedom, if you will, or in that lack of regulation that they choose to enact there, only about 3 out of 5 water systems, public water systems in the country feed fluoride. So it is not a required addition. If, however, a state chooses to make it mandatory, it could. North Carolina is not one of those states that's made it mandatory. If then a public water system chooses to feed fluoride on their own decision, that's a decision that ultimately was written into the rulemaking process years ago. And in fact, for the town of Valdese, it was a decision that was made in the 1970s. We went back and found that resolution when the town council at that point in time made it known that they were going to begin feeding fluoride into the public water system. And so that decision then came with a couple of steps for notification that were enacted. And so by completing those steps, then the feed was initiated. Since the town does choose to feed fluoride at this point, it is following then what the EPA and the state consider secondary standards. Those secondary standards mean that they're technically non-enforceable except at certain levels, is the way the rule is written. And so what that means is that it's a recommended minimum concentration of 0.7 milligrams per liter. Get sciencey on you for a minute there, but the 0.7 milligrams per liter concentration is the concentration that is recommended by the feds and the state for holding that when it leaves this system, when it leaves the water treatment plant. If in the course of feeding that fluoride feed, it gets to where that concentration increases for any reason, and it's detected at 2 milligrams per liter or greater, then that requires a public notice within 12 months to every water user that you supply water to. And that is an acknowledgement of the fact that you can overfeed chloride. If at some point that fluoride feed leaves the plant at a concentration greater than 4 milligrams per liter, it is no longer a secondary requirement or a secondary standard. It becomes a primary standard that is a maximum and that is enforceable. And so the notification has to happen, and then you would be talking to the state folks at Public Water Supply to try to figure out what next steps would be taken after that point. I want to stress there, that is a drastically higher amount, and that's never happened that anybody knows of in the town's water system. But there is an acknowledgement there on behalf of the EPA to limit that maximum amount of dosage. So as we're kind of digesting some of those details, it's just worth noting that there are certain things that they do control in that process, and then there are certain things that they give the delegated authority to the individual entities to enact on. So everything that we're talking about in the process with this resolution to consider removing the fluoride feed is governed by the Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, also referred to as PWS. That agency is responsible for administering the North Carolina Administrative Code. And so that's where those primary and secondary standards are written. That's where they establish the process for both adding fluoride if you don't currently have it, and that's where they establish the process for removing the fluoride feed. And so that process for removing the feed, as I noted, is simply a resolution by the current governing board that they will remove that chemical from the public water system. Once that decision is made, a notice has to be provided to the health department. A notice has to be provided to the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services, oral health section. And then you would also notify the DEQ folks, the Public Water Supply Group, who comes to check on your water treatment plant from time to time. So if that decision is made to remove the fluoride feed, that's the process that this is all considering. That's the process that would be followed to keep everything on the approvable side of the operations. So let's talk a little bit about the project and what that includes. The upcoming water treatment plant project, if everybody recalls, was funded through an earmark from the North Carolina legislature in 2023. And that project has been modified through the course of that project's development to also address with local town funds that are being contributed, and it's all been factored into the CIP, which Bo mentioned. It all kind of factors in with the rate study, rate analysis, revenue analysis, all of those things. But that addition of the bulk chemical storage is really what's at question here with the project, because you have very large tanks that are outside of any of the other facilities, and the tank that he showed you a picture of is the bulk storage tank for fluoride feed. And so that tank holds several thousand gallons of fluoride that is then dosed daily interior to the building in some of these areas where you see some of the concrete pictures that he's got. And it sits in a day tank from there, and then it's fed by a chemical metering pump into the water system that then gets dispersed out into the distribution system for everybody to consume. So the bulk storage area is really the issue in this case. So more on that in just a minute though. But the intent of the overall water treatment project is to restore reliable water treatment capacity for increased production. Why is that important? This is a 12 MGD water plant that was built in the 1950s, 60s, 70s, just about every decade there was some kind of an upgrade that took place. And so it's a 12 MGD facility, but as we all know, actual production and actual water consumption in Valdese dropped drastically in the 90s when textiles left town. And so this is a plant that's been running currently at about a quarter of its available capacity or its rated capacity. So when you've got older equipment that can be maintenance deferred, improvements deferred, those kind of things for a number of years, you can get by with that when your production is at a quarter of its intended capacity. As you look forward, and the intention of this project is to prepare for increase in usage, namely the potential for the Lenore Interconnect, where the town has a contract to sell up to 4 million gallons a day to the city of Lenore. That number is important because current production is about 3.3 million gallons every single day on average. The maximum day production in the last 2 to 3 years is 4.7 million gallons in a single day. Now that was one day, again, average is about 3.3. So with that 12 MGD plant rating, both of those numbers sound reasonable. They are achievable. You can accomplish the treatment levels that we need to accomplish and meet not only the secondary standards that we've been talking about, but also meet the primary standards that really are enforceable by the state on the town. So with those numbers in mind, when you consider operating at 3.3 to 3.5, maybe 4 MGD for town usage, town purposes on everyday demands, and then you add on top of that the potential to sell another 4 million gallons per day to the city of Lenore, all of a sudden the production levels and the certainty of being able to meet all of the required demands of that system begin to get a little more questionable. And so would they necessarily fail to meet other standards at that level? Nobody can say. But it is a matter of taking care of the processes in total to make sure that we can get to where we need to be with that. And so one of the project components is that needs to be completed is at that potentially, let's use the term for now, the 8 MGD range or more. You've basically doubled plant production from about the 4 level that it is today. And so one of the main chemicals that needs to be fed in that process is caustic. And it is a chemical used to adjust the pH of the water before it begins to be treated, and it aids with all of the other treatment processes that go on, namely settleability of sediment in the water that comes out of the Lake Rhodhius. So ultimately what we're talking about here is a bulk fluoride tank that needs to be replaced if it's going to stay in service. Or we're talking about using that space where the bulk fluoride tank sits today as becoming the space where a second caustic bulk tank would go included in the project. So that's it's kind of a real estate issue, if you will, in that sense. Are there other options for moving the fluoride or for moving the additional caustic tank to other spots on the project site? There are, but they are not within the current project scope or current project budget. And so as you're considering what those mean, we look at the bulk fluoride tank itself as about a $160,000 replacement item. So if you complete it in the current project, that's $160,000 of the construction budget that it's going to use up to replace just that tank. And so if you kept fluoride, you spend that $160,000 on the fluoride tank, and then you're going to have to ask yourself in a later project, what would an additional chemical treatment facility of this kind of size, what is that going to cost to construct that on the property at the water plant? And so that number is one that can range very widely, but it is an expensive number based on other recent projects of similar scope. And so that's going to be a number that could be 1.6 all the way up to $2 million to add that additional treatment system for the additional bulk chemical down the road. Whether or not you would leave the fluoride exactly where it's at and then put the new caustic tank somewhere else, or whether you would kind of swap places with those two, those would all be details that would have to be scoped out better as you really dig in. But again, as we're just looking at kind of the big picture ideas, those are some numbers to be considering. And so, as Bo mentioned, your chemical costs at $16,000 a year would also need to continue, and they have been budgeted, would continue to be budgeted unless the council decided to end that fluoride feed. And then there are, as you can see, some corrosive issues. There are MSDS sheets that OSHA requires the town to keep on hand for the fluoride chemical itself. It is one that has methods, and those MSDS sheets help the operators operate in a safe way, but it is also one that does come with some consequences if there are spills. So, whether or not those are acceptable risks are certainly valid questions, but they are part of the fluoride feed process. So it's been a lot of me rambling on about a number of details in the process. I'll be happy to field any questions that anybody has right now, but that's kind of the history and the background of where the decision and the technical aspects of it, how it's coming into play.
How much money have we received to do these upgrades that you're talking about?
The total original award from the state was a $7 million award. And so then the Department of Water Infrastructure takes a cut off of the top of that. And then you've got design fees that are included off of that. And so then when you take those out and then you add back in the additional bulk chemical funds that the town decided to contribute to the project. The total budget for construction is gonna be 6.67 million. And estimates right now, as Bo said, we're leading up to bidding later this summer. Estimates right now are going to be in the range of 6.4 as a base bid, up to considering some alternate bids to add in different pieces that aren't required but may be very helpful. You could see bids range up to as much as $8 million. Again, comparing those numbers against the 6.67 that's available right now for construction.
RJ, I don't quite understand exactly. Keep the fluoride, build a new tank. Is that what you're saying?
If you keep the fluoride feed in its current use, we continue to use it, you will need to build more chemical storage for caustic at some point relatively soon.
How long down the road are we looking at for that?
The question of when that would be is largely unknown. The agreement that the town has in place with the city of Lenore basically would say that upon completion of the interconnection line between Lenore and Valdese, they're going to begin using a minimum of 300,000 gallons every day. They could, however, request an additional 3,700,000 gallons every day to reach their maximum of 4. Are they going to ask for 4 MGD on day one? I don't know. Nobody knows that answer. It would seem like that's not a highly likely scenario, but as we're planning a project of this size and magnitude, it's wise to plan for operating at the point where you could be operating.
When is the approximate start date for that project with the city of Lenore?
The interconnection project is under design right now, and we anticipate that will be out to bid in, we'll go to permits in early summer. So that project's a little behind yours. It probably won't go to bid until, I would say, towards the end of the year.
Okay,
How long-
and
how
when
long
will
ago?
it be effective?
End of the
Yeah,
year.
End of the year.
End of the year for bids, and then when would it start up?
Once that project starts, if you say it starts in early 2027, it's going to probably be early 2028 or mid 2028 before it's completed and in service.
Okay, council, what are your, any more questions?
I guess I'll jump in here for just a second. I guess the question for council is, if you want to keep fluoride, we need to be able to go out and make that one of the alternates. Is that correct? RJ, when we start doing the bid process, we'd have to make that an alternate?
We would.
And you're estimating it to be somewhere between 1.6 and $2 million in today's dollars. And we would also need to include in the upcoming budget $160,000 to replace that tank. Is that correct?
I think the timing of that would certainly be important to discuss with staff and council because that is completely, the additional chemical treatment facility is completely outside of the scope of everything that's been discussed. So that's going to take some time to prepare all of those design documents. I think I would recommend that it be maintain the project schedule for the current scope, and that chemical feed addition would be a project to happen a year or so down the road. But in today's dollars, those are the numbers that I would consider.
So just to be clear, that y'all's conversation, we would need to consider adding the 160,000 for the replacement tank should be in this upcoming budget. We would need to add that in at this time, at a minimum.
Potentially, yes. And that would depend on some of those alternates that are already planned, because I say it's $160,000 of value, but if you don't do the fluoride, that's $160,000 that's free to go towards one of the alternates that exists.
Right.
If you keep the fluoride and we have to make a switch to include a new bulk fluoride tank, then that just kind of impacts the overall funds available.
And the impact of, if a decision would be made to discontinue the fluoride feed, impact on bulk customers such as Lenore who buys our water, not having fluoride, they think now they're getting fluoride. I mean, how does that impact some of those decisions? I mean, I think that's part of the things we have to consider.
Right, right. Well, Lenore is also a water producer, so they are not simply a bulk customer. They would be buying water from Valdese to supplement what they already produce.
Okay.
And they do dose fluoride today, just like Town of Valdese does. So there would be some residual fluoride that remains in their system if they kept feeding and Valdese did not.
Okay.
The customers that are more dependent on your fluoride are gonna be your bulk customers in county who are simply just buying your water and don't have a water plant of their own. So that's Ockard Water, that's Rutherford College, that's Burke County, I'm trying to think who else. But those entities would be the ones who have a public water system, but they're just purchasers, they're not producing.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my question would be, has this been discussed with Rutherford College and Eichard and Burke County from our town staff?
I'm sorry, but, yeah, if you don't mind.
That's a good question. It has not. We generally don't talk about this, how we do our processes with our bulk customers. That's all decided internally here with the town, how we handle those operations. So,
I just think this is a pretty important issue. Everything I've read, received a lot of emails and calls today. I spent my whole career working with children, and fluoride in the water is very important for children, in particular. The American Dental Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the American Medical Association, all continue to endorse community water fluoridation. And it's very hard for me to sit here and listen to all this with a lot of information that we didn't have until tonight. This is, you're asking a lot, and we've not been given a lot of this information until tonight.
Okay. Again, I think the intention was well-meaning, maybe the execution failed a little bit, but, at the end of, we're trying to find ways to lessen the burden of our water rates increases. And if council, is not amenable to removing fluoride, we're totally supportive of that. It's just, we just want council to understand and know that, due to the damage of the tank and the replacement of the tank, there will be a significant cost along with that.
I think that's the biggest question for me tonight. I know we've received a lot of information tonight that it would be hard to make a decision, in my opinion, this evening. But something we're gonna have to look at too is how much does that cost? I know fluoride, some consider it important, some people do all they can to stay away from it. So it is a touchy subject. The biggest thing for me is what would the cost increase be? Because that is something that we are talked about quite a bit, in Valdese about our water rates. And if it's gonna go up a lot more, we may wanna really take a minute and take a breather and see, at least wait a month and make, or during the budget process, make these decisions. Because to make that decision tonight, I don't think would be very wise.
And I think that's totally fair. Again, when it's all said and done, we're gonna have to spend $160,000 if we don't decide to remove it. There's not a,
we'll have to spend $160,000 just for the tank.
yeah, just for the
Okay.
tank.
But the bigger picture is over the next year or two, where we have to figure out what we're gonna do with our bulk chemical storage, because we gotta feed the Lenore project. that's gonna be the main part of the money, because that's where RJ was talking about, between $1.62 million just to reallocate some areas, whereas where the fluoride system is now, if we reuse that existing area, then we wouldn't have to build new infrastructure for it.
Is there a way to possibly know in the next little bit what kind of, how that would break down to the customer? at
Well, it all depends on when we decide to do it and the
Okay.
interest rates we get at that time.
Yeah,
So,
like in the next,
so if we
month.
decide to pull the trigger and build the additional chemical storage unit, if we took out doing easy math, you're probably looking at somewhere between 8% and 9% increase just to pay that loan off. If we do it 2 years from now and interest rates are lower, that number drops. If it's higher, that number goes up.
And that's on top of the normal operating stuff too. So, like I said, this is just one item that we identified that, hey, this isn't regulated. We don't, we're not required by the state. Maybe we can save some ratepayers some money here by not going forward with this process. So that's all we were doing here.
and there are counties and there are states that have banned it, there are counties that have gotten rid of it in North Carolina. It's a pretty big topic right now, so.
And like I said, we could offer fluoride rinse here at Town Hall. We can keep that in stock. Anybody of our customers that would like to have a monthly supply, we're happy to do that for them as an alternative. Just an idea, just trying to help everybody here, so.
I do think, similar to what Councilman Lohman said, and maybe all of us, but I know I too have received a lot of calls and emails and messages today from residents and customers that are concerned about it not being in the water supply. So if we decide, I think we at least need to table this decision tonight at a minimum, if we don't want to go ahead and make a call on the vote. But I think we need to be very thoughtful about this, with the understanding that residents and customers need to understand that your rates are that there's gonna be a cost on that side of things.
Also, I think it's important to note, this is not, a Valdese problem. There's a lot of water there's a lot of water, providers going through the same issue with fluoride right now. I mean, the system, the delivery systems last, RJ, is it 5 to 7 years and they have to be replaced? So as pressure gets on every water, provider, these are questions they haven't asked themselves. So I don't want anybody to think it's just a Valdese problem. There's a lot of water providers going through the same issue.
And we won't hurt the project timeline if y'all need to table this too. So.
I also had several people reach out to myself as well on both sides. They're concerned about having anything added to the water. I know it's been in there, but they want the option, whether they have it or not. But, fluoride in the past has been known to be very helpful for children specifically. I did write something I'd like to just read for a moment. I appreciate the opportunity to speak on the topic of fluoride in our town's water system, an issue that has generated important discussion and strong opinions on both sides. Fluoride is a natural occurring mineral that has been added to public water systems for decades and as a way to reduce tooth decay. From both public health data and my own experience working in the dental field, I can say the fluoride has played a meaningful role in improving dental health, particularly in children. Fluoride strengthens tooth enamel and can help reduce cavities if daily oral hygiene is maintained. At the same time, fluoride is widely available through other sources such as toothpaste, mouthwash, and professional dental treatment. Most people receive adequate fluoride exposure without relying on drinking water. We should also consider how people consume tap water today. Many individuals and families rely on bottled water rather than drinking directly from the tap, which can reduce or eliminate their exposure to fluoridated municipal water altogether. This raises the question of how much benefit is truly being delivered through the water system alone. There are also valid concerns that deserve consideration. Some residents feel strongly about personal choice and the idea of adding anything to the public water supply. Other points out that total fluoride exposure today may be higher than in the past, raising questions about whether water fluoridation is still necessary in the same way it once was. There are cost and operational responsibilities associated with maintaining a fluoridation system. Ultimately, this decision is about balance. It is about weighing a long-standing public health benefit against evolving access to dental care, individual preference, and the priorities of our community. As someone with experience in the dental field, I recognize both sides of the benefit for fluoride has providing and the ways access to dental care and producing and the products has changed over time. With that in mind, I am open to thoroughly considering whether fluoride needs to remain in our municipal water. I believe it is appropriate for us to evaluate this with current information, community input, and the focus on what is best to serve all of our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, council, what are your wishes as to a motion?
Did Councilwoman Zimmerman make a motion to table?
Did I? Are you asking,
I
or
just
will I?
wondered.
I'll make a motion to table this agenda item until next month.
And I'll second that.
A second. Any further discussion?
The only thing for me is if there was some type of way that we could know, is there a way to know a number so people will know what we're looking at?
Yeah, we'll work on that and plug it into the model and see what exactly it.
Thank
I
you.
think we need a lot more information than we have.
Okay.
I really do.
Okay. Thank you. At this time, yes. All in favor of the motion to table it till next month, please raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, moving on to new business. State of the Department, Fire Department, Chief Walton.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. I apologize in advance. This will be a little bit long. We'll get through it. There's a lot of information, but if anybody has any questions along the way, please feel free to ask them. All right, so our previous accomplishments over about the last 5 years, through the town, we obtained an ATV or side-by-side, whichever one you prefer to call it. I'm sure you've seen it at festivals. We generally have it out at the parade as well. But we can use it for wildland search as well as wildland fires. We've used it several times at the park to go get people off of trails now. We also, a couple years ago, we obtained a water rescue boat and water rescue equipment through a private donation. We needed that because we cover about 7 miles of shoreline. Most people don't realize that. We cover Huffman Bridge to Castle Bridge. So anytime there's a medical emergency on the water, a water emergency on the water, anything like that, we were getting toned out, and pretty much we'd have to sit there and watch while we called somebody else. So luckily, we have our own boat that we can get and assist. We're still calling other agencies to assist with that, but we can do more now. So also through a private donation about 2 years ago, we switched to a national standard thread on our 2.5 connections. If you notice, most of the fire hydrants in town have green caps on the 2 smaller connections. It's because those are a custom thread that Valdese maintained a custom thread until about 2 years ago, which meant anytime we ordered new equipment, that was a increased delay in getting it because it had to be custom made as well as an increased price. So through a private donation a couple years ago, we were able to change out all of the threads on our trucks. So now the only thing that we have that is Valdese threaded is an adapter that'll go on the hydrant. That way we can still run a hose from the hydrant to our truck. But it makes it a lot easier going with automatic aid to our surrounding departments as well. We also obtained high-angle rescue equipment, ropes and things. So if you're in a hole, off a cliff, anything like that, up in a tree, we can now come get you. Where before we didn't have much rope equipment, so now we have a lot of rope equipment. And then I'd like to say last month we finally received our certificates from the North Carolina Association of Rescue and EMS. So as a department, we are now certified in light rescue, surface water rescue, swift water rescue, high angle rescue, and medical responder unit. Not listed on here is medium rescue, but hopefully within the next few months we'll get the last couple pieces of equipment that we need to be a medium vehicle extrication department. All right. So going through our apparatus real quick. So engine 1, it's 2004 Pierce Quantum pumper. Pumper and engine, those are synonymous, just so everybody knows. It kind of means the same thing. This is primarily our first out truck, so if we have a fire or something in town, it's the first one that rolls. Most medical calls, especially after fire, if it were to happen, we do have to stay on scene until EMS gets there though, so there may still be some delay. So engine 3, 60 engine 3, it's a 1995 Pierce Dash 1250 pumper. This is predominantly our mutual aid truck, so when we have a fire outside of the town of Valdese, we take it to our surrounding departments. It's also, if we have a fire in town, most of the time this is the one that catches the hydrant and lays the line from the hydrant to engine 1, our main pumper. Of course, ladder 1, our newest apparatus is a 17 Pierce Enforcer 75-foot ladder with a 2,000 gallon per minute pump. And then the medic truck, we somewhat replaced our medic truck last year with this new 2025 Chevy 2500 HD pickup. If you notice, it does have a winch on the front. That was part of the rescue standard that we got certified. We had to have a winch that was a minimum of 8,000 pounds, so that's why it has a winch on it. Fire marshal truck, this is predominantly Assistant Chief Henry's vehicle, as he's our fire marshal. He drives it around doing inspections, investigations, things like that, most every day. Command 1, so this used to be our medic truck, and it does still belong to Burke County. However, they didn't really want it back whenever we replaced it with the new one, so we renamed it Command 1, and that's now our chief's vehicle. So that's my take-home car, take-home vehicle that I'm driving to calls and to training and meetings and everything else. And then we have a 1996 GMC 3500 pickup truck. This is utility one. We predominantly use it for hydrant maintenance, if we need to haul something, anything like that. If you look at it real close, it's got a real pink color to it from hydrant painting, from the overspray of hydrant painting. So we mainly use it for the more dirty things that we don't want to get our other trucks messed up with. And then, of course, ATV1, we talked about that. It's a 2020 Kawasaki Mule. We use it at the park, festivals, things like that. We've used it on a few brush fires as well to transport people and equipment. And then Marine One is a 2022 15.5-foot inflatable rescue boat with a 40 horsepower motor. All right, so that's all of our equipment. So now let's take a quick stroll through all the services that we provide, because most people think we do structure fires and medical, but we do a lot more. We do structure fires, wildland fires, medical emergencies, mutual aid to other departments, meaning we go to assist other agencies, other fire departments, rescue departments, whatever needs to be. We do our own fire investigations in-house. We do pre-incident planning for all of our businesses, fire prevention inspections, so that's predominantly Levi's jobs, doing inspections of all of our businesses. We do plans review for anything that's not a 1 or 2 family dwelling that's being built or renovated. We have to do plans review for all of that. We do smoke alarm installs at no cost to citizens for anybody that lives within the town. And then we do fire prevention education. We go to the schools. And then fire extinguishers, evacuation plans, and anything else requested. We do a lot of that at our local businesses and factories as well. And then we are a part of Safe Kids Worldwide and Burke County Safe Kids. So with that, we do bicycle rodeos, predominantly in the summer, that teaches kids how to ride a bike and basic bicycle safety, hand signals, and things like that. We also do car seat inspections. We do medicine drop events, so if you have old medicines, you can drop them off. We do hot car displays. We had the hot car display set up last year at the festival. Tells you the temperature between inside a vehicle and the exterior of the vehicle, mainly on hot days. And then also just public education on general safety topics. Services provided continued. So we talked about vehicle extrication, water rescue. We do land search and rescue for lost individuals, high angle rescue. We do special event standbys such as foot races, 5Ks, festivals, all of those things, football games. We do station tours. We do hydrant maintenance. We have a Knox box program, which is the box that most businesses have out front, that we can have one single key on the truck that unlocks that lock box to get the key out for that business, instead of having a whole box full of keys that we got to sort through to find the right one. We do hazardous materials response to the operations level, tree removal from roadways when we need to, confined space standbys, vehicle lockouts. We will come unlock your vehicle under certain circumstances. Forcible entry, we've made entry into homes for people before. And then we do our own janitorial services at the station, and then we also do our own maintenance at the facility for our equipment and our apparatus. And the list goes on. We do have a junior firefighter program for those people 14 years of age to 18, so they can come learn what we do and put their hands on actual equipment, everything. They can run calls with us. They can do most things other than go into a burning building or drive a truck. But outside of that, we generally allow them to do as much as possible to learn as much as they can. We do training with Drone High School Fire Academy. Of course, we do the parades. We do the Mingle with Kringle Christmas breakfast with Santa Claus. We are a SCBA fuel station, so we have, I know, 2 businesses in town that have their own SCBAs that they use for various things that they do in their processes. So every once in a while, they'll bring their SCBA bottles to us to fill them for them. We restring flagpoles. We used to do that pretty recently. Haven't had that call lately, but we were restringing flagpoles pretty often there for a while. I will say with that one, as long as the ladder truck will reach it, we will restring it. And then Burke County Homeland Security Task Force, we're a member of that. We do continuing education in-house with our people as well as through Western Piedmont. We do the emergency management processes for the town as well as disaster preparedness and pretty much anything else that you'll call 911 for that does not need a badge or a gun. All right, so then with that, I also, not only am the fire chief, but I also double as the safety director for the town. So I'm really in charge of OSHA compliance for all the town facilities, our safety data sheet program for all of our chemicals at all the facilities, safety policy revision and updates. I handle all the DOT CDL drug testing program as well as workers' comp paperwork. I also deal with risk management, technical guidance on safety things and recommendations, facility safety inspections, as well as the monthly check of town hall extinguishers, AED, exit lights, and emergency lights. All right, so moving on from services provided to call volume. So our call volume has kind of, the last couple years, it's been about the same, but up until then, it kind of exploded there for a little bit. So from year 21 to 22, we had a 17.7% increase. From 22 to 23, we had a 16.67% increase. And then 23 to 24, we went up some. 24 to 25, we didn't go up a lot, but in 24, we had Hurricane Helene, and that was 33-ish calls were directly related to Hurricane Helene. So from 24 to 25, we made up for that 30-something calls plus a handful more. And then this year so far, we're, based on what we've run as of Friday, we're on course to run 871 this year on average, which is another slight increase. But on average from 2010, we have increased 4.7% annually. So in 2010, we were at 448 calls. So this year, we're pretty much on pace to be right at twice as much as we were in 2010. So what's contributing to our call volume increase? Increase in population. Valdese is growing. We're seeing more and more buildings, more and more apartments, more and more homes. With that, an aging population. The median age of Valdese is in the mid-50s range. So we do have a older population than most places, which leads to more medical calls. With our call volume nationwide, most places are about 70% medical. We're more in about the 80 to 82% range that's medical calls. And then additional services provided, like we talked about earlier, the rescue services that we now provide, and then also lack of volunteerism and fire department personnel. And you may ask how that adds to call volume, but we'll get into that here shortly. All right, so the personnel that we currently have 7 full-time positions, only 6 of them are field. So currently we have the fire chief / safety director, that's myself, the assistant chief and fire marshal, that's assistant chief Levi. We have a 1 8 to 5 captain position that we finally filled in October after it was vacant for a little over a year. And then we have 4 engineer positions, but currently we only have 3, and one of those has been vacant since January of 25. And then we also have 16 part-time firefighter EMTs, and then 1 junior firefighter currently. So staffing. So Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, we have an absolute maximum of 5 people generally. So that actually includes a part-time firefighter slot, which honestly, lately, It's very rare that we get that slot filled. That's several reasons for that. Most people are working 2, 3, 4 jobs. Whenever Valdese started the part-time 8 to 5 position in 2016, they were paying $15 an hour, and everybody else around us was at about $10 an hour. Well, now we're at $17 an hour, and our 2 departments side by side, one offers $17 an hour, and the other one offers $18 an hour. But the big difference in those is those 2 departments that are on either side of us also offer 12 and 24-hour shifts, where we only offer an 8-hour shift. So if somebody's, and most of our part-time folks work full-time elsewhere, so they're gonna take one of their days off to work. And I know it sounds weird to most people, but people that are on shift or would rather work a 12 or a 24-hour extra shift as opposed to just an 8-hour shift. And of course, so I say the absolute maximum of 5. Generally, we have 4 people Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, but that does not include people that are out for training or taking time off. So today we had one, our captain was actually at a training today, so we had 3 people today. And then nights, weekends, and holidays, that drops to 1 person, just our 1 fire engineer is there by himself, night, weekends, and holidays. Which me as the chief, that terrifies me, because most of your line of duty firefighter deaths that you see now are some type of cardiac incident, generally after a fire or after an incident. So a lot of them are found at the station the next day, generally. So it terrifies me that I have 1 person there at night, weekends, holidays, that's by themselves. Y'all have all seen our bedroom, it's upstairs. So if we get a call and they take off and they're running down the steps and trip and break their leg or something, break their neck falling down the stairs, there's a good chance I might not know until they just don't show up for the call. So that does worry me. But staffing challenges, we talked about the part-time firefighter only offering 8 to 5 shifts. A lack of volunteerism overall, and it's not just Valdese, it's the fire service overall. I saw an article the other day that New York State's lost about 70% of their volunteer firefighters in about a 5 to 10 year range. And then part-time firefighters working elsewhere. So like I said, most of them work full-time elsewhere. And we are sometimes the 2nd job, but sometimes the 3rd, 4th, and 5th job for some of them as well. So, fire department responsibilities. So just to compare our entry-level full-time position, which is an engineer, to, say, Hickory Fire Department, and I did mention this to Mr. Hill whenever we were going through our pay study evaluation stuff. So, if you're at Hickory Fire Department, generally they have 3 people on a truck, 3 to 4 people on a truck. So your firefighter operations, which would be pulling the hose, throwing ladders, forcing doors, anything like that, you generally have a firefighter that rides the back seat that takes care of that. The person who drives and operates the apparatus whenever you get to the scene, that's the engineer, the driver operator. That's their main job, is to drive and operate the truck. The person who oversees that individual truck and the people on that individual truck is generally the captain. And then if it's a larger incident and an actual fire, anything like that, a battalion chief shows up and he's the incident commander. So for us at Valdese, when we only have 1 person on shift, that person gets there as the engineer, drives the truck there, but then they're in charge of throwing ladders, pulling hose, all that, in the hopes of somebody else showing up. So we talked about them driving and operating the truck. They're overseeing, supervising that truck, that equipment. They're the ones making the initial decision on what's going to happen at the scene. And then, unless myself or Levi shows up, they're also the incident commander and in command of the whole scene as well. So our engineer, yes, they are titled as an engineer, but they can fill anywhere from a firefighter to a battalion chief at most other fire departments, depending on what role they're taking at that exact moment. So, moving on, going into response percentages. So, the average for 2025, our full-time personnel across the board average running 40% of our total calls last year. So each individual, their average on-call percentage was across the board 40% for our full-time. For our part-time folks, like I said, this is 3rd, 4th, sometimes 5th job for people. Our average part-time person ran only 4% of our calls last year. And then so far moving into this year, our full-time people so far are at about 41%, and then our part-time people are at 3%. So that just shows yes, they're not technically volunteers because we pay them when they do show up, but lack of volunteerism overall. People are busy. They are working a 2nd, 3rd, 4th job, as well as trying to balance whatever's going on with their families too. And then moving on into structure fire responses, so I pulled a bunch of data. So about 10 years ago, if we had a fire in Valdese, people on Valdese Fire Department, you had 8 to 10 people that showed up on the initial call for a structure fire at that point. And we only received 1 automatic aid department. So if you were on the west side, you got Triple Community Fire Department. If you were on the east side of town, you got Lovelady Fire Department. That 1 department was in 4 to 5 people. So you're looking at a total of 12 to 15 people on the initial dispatch for a structure fire. Now, moving into 2025 and so far in 26, if we had a structure fire in Valdese, Valdese Fire Department, we're looking at 4 to 6 people total from Valdese that'll be there. And then now we're getting 2 automatic aid departments because, like I said, it's not just Valdese, but everybody's struggling. So we're getting 2 departments coming with us, and each of them are at 1 to 2 personnel each of what they're sending. So the total personnel now is roughly half of what it was 10 years ago. And I remember when I joined Valdese 8 years ago, if we were going automatic aid to a different department, so it was a different department's primary response area that we got toned out to, it was a race to get to the fire department to be the first 4 or 5 people on the truck to get to go. Now it's generally our 1 engineer and myself typically. We generally have just 2 people that are going outside of town to assist another department. And with that, ISO and OSHA, which ISO, will go a lot into ISO here in a little bit, but it's Insurance Services Office, so that's who rates the fire departments. The minimum requirement for ISO and OSHA is a minimum of 4 people from the primary department. So with us at that 4 to 6 range, we're right on the cusp of potentially being below that soon if we do not get additional staffing and additional help. And we currently get 2 automatic aid departments, but each department, the department on either side of us, now they have 3 automatic aid departments for a structure fire, which means they go and then 3 other departments are dispatched as well on the initial, just to try to get additional people. So that's 4 departments, essentially 4 whole fire departments dispatched for a single structure fire on the initial call. All right, so we talked about response district. So town of Valdese, this is our primary response district. This is what we're responsible for, everything that happens fire-wise, fire medical, hazmat, fire investigations, all that stuff, inspections, pre-plans, all that. We're responsible for all of that within the 7.87 square miles of Valdese. However, with, like I said, the departments on either side of us increasing to 3 departments on a structure fire, that's also increased the area that we respond to if they get a fire. So what we are primarily responsible for is 7.87 square miles. Our automatic aid district is outlined in green, and our automatic aid district, where we go if they get a fire, we're dispatched on the initial dispatch, is approximately 45 square miles. So that's increased, like I said, because they're asking for more departments, but also we respond to them because we couldn't function without them coming to us at the same time. So we have to go to them in order to receive their help on the way back, on the flip side. All right, so say we hire a new person in and they've never been a firefighter, not been in at all. So initial training requirements for a part-time firefighter to be fully functional as a part-time person, ISO 127 or ICS, so that's Incident Command System, those are through FEMA, it's about 16 hours total. Firefighter certification through the state of North Carolina is 388 hours. Hazmat operations, which is required to get your firefighter certification, is 40 hours, and then EMT is right around 240 hours. So to come in with absolutely nothing, and then to be pretty functional as a basic firefighter EMT is about 684 hours of training for the person coming in. So say that person wants to go from part-time with these certifications to full-time. Whenever we hire them full-time, to get them fully functional in all the aspects of everything that we do, you have to have EVD, which is emergency vehicle driver operator, pumps and aerials, that's specifically operating the truck, rapid intervention crew, which is a certification and a class that teaches you what to do when a firefighter goes down in a home, how to properly rescue them. TR on here means technical rescue, so technical rescue or intro, 45 hours, technical rescue or common passenger vehicle. And then the apparatus drive time and training, that's in-house to make sure you know the streets of Valdese, train you on our specific trucks, make sure you can drive them. Technical rescue heavy vehicle, technical rescue ropes, which goes into the high angle rescue, surface and swift water, machinery and agriculture rescue, because those are required for the department to have the rescue certification that we received. And then wildland S-130, S-190, L-180, that's about wildland fire. And then CPS technician, which is child passenger safety technician, to be able to install car seats and teach others about those. So in addition to the part-time hours, you're looking at 706 hours for a full-time person to come in and get their training, to be fully functional in all the areas that we currently do. So the total to go from absolutely brand new with no training to fully certified as a new engineer, you're looking at about 1,390 hours of training. All right, so, and that doesn't include recommended training or advanced training. So other training that's offered that we recommend that our people advance to would be for their fire instructor certifications, fire officer certifications, fire life safety educator, fire inspector, law and admin, which goes along with fire inspections, incident command system 300 and 400, which is mainly for larger incidents, the NFA courses, which that's National Fire Academy courses, leadership courses, fire investigation technician, additional technical rescue certifications, as well as the UNC Charlotte Fire and Rescue Management Institute, and Chief 101, which is a basic one-day class that teaches you all the basic requirements of being a chief. So we'll go into cost of hiring a new person. So an applicant, somebody comes to turn in their application, and it doesn't matter if they've had 20 years in the fire department or they're brand new, it's about a $300 cost between a physical, a drug test, and background checks. It's about $300 before we actually say you are offered the position, to get through all of that. So then to bring them on as a part-time firefighter, we're looking at a total of about $20,000. So a set of turnout gear is about $6,000. That covers helmet, hood, coat, gloves, pants, and boots. It's about $6,000. Uniforms, to get them pretty much the basic stuff, that way they match all of us, is about $1,700. And training to send them to all those hours at what our current part-time is about not 23, but about $12,300. If we hire a full-time person that comes in with zero training, we're looking at about $41,000. Turnout gear, we add just a couple things too for our full-time folks. So it's about $6,500. Uniforms, they get a little bit more than our part-time folks, so it's $2,500. And then training, it's all that extra training that we talked about. It comes to about $32,000. So that's the price to bring somebody in. What that does not include is, since we only have one person on shift, you are having to cover those shifts for that 6 to 7 months while that person's in that much training. So that does not include shift coverage for 6 to 7 months while that person's going through training, as well as any hotel stays, travel costs for any of that, or any admin costs associated with that. So speaking of cost, recent cost increases over the last 5 to 6 years, just to give you an idea, because our budget has reflected it. Firefighter physicals have gone up about 129%. SCBA compressor maintenance about 20%. Generator service about 41%. Of course, ground ladders and aerial ladder testing have gone up pretty significantly. A set of apparatus tires has gone up 19% over the last 5 to 6 years. Firefighter turnout gear, what we was talking about, head to toe, has gone up roughly 60% in 5 years. Active 911 subscription, so what that is when we get a call, the comm center, one, they can send it over our pagers that talk to us, but two, that sends it to our cell phones. That way it can directly map you directly to the home and give you some basic notes on what the call is. That's gone up about 57%. And then property casualty insurance for the fire department has gone up about 104%. But the biggest thing is records management system has gone up 213% over the last 5 to 6 years. Part of that is the new federal requirement to go to NERIS, which is National Emergency Response Information System, and they did away with the old NIFRS, which was National Fire Incident Response System. That was part of it, as well as emergency reporting, which was the old system that everybody was bought out, and they did away with it, and the company that bought them out drastically increased prices. with their product. All right, so then going into our current facility, I didn't put any pictures in here because we've kind of beat this like a dead horse, but our current facility has a lot of problems. It's not set up to host multiple people, certainly not of different genders. Our training room's too small. Our current kitchen that we had to make shift into a kitchen doesn't have any type of ventilation area. The bays, they're kind of small for our size trucks, as well as having the lockers on either side of the trucks makes it difficult getting equipment in and out of the trucks when need be. And then, of course, turnout gear SCBA system is directly in the bay, exposed to exhaust. Not enough gear lockers for our personnel. And then we can't open the cabs of the trucks because the ceiling's too low to perform maintenance inside, so we have to pull the trucks out. But we can't pull them out on the front pad because we stick out 5-6 feet out in the middle of the road on Fayette Street. So we always have to pull them around the rear of the building. Of course, our offices are in an exterior trailer, which kind of makes communication throughout the day with our people difficult. And then, of course, plumbing issues, clogged drains, things like that, electrical issues. Sometimes stuff just quits working, and whoever wired the building every wire they used was red. So when you pull the outlet out of the wall, every wire hooked to it's red. So it's kind of a guessing game at that point. And then our server room, which contains our main internet server as well as our phone system for the fire department, is still in the section that has been condemned. All right, so moving on from our current state to our ISO rating. So generally ISO, which is Insurance Service Office, they rate every fire department across the country, with the basic rating of 9S being a recognized fire department. Some departments choose to stay there. Some departments try to better themselves above 9S to try to reduce some insurance costs for the people within their district. So generally, it's based on a 10-point system, with a 90 or better being a 1, so a rating of 1 is the absolute best you can do. And then every 10 points is a different class. Currently, we are a class 3 in Valdese, and our last inspection was in 2022, in January of 22. So, and then class 10 down here is pretty much, it's not rated as a fire department, and that includes areas greater than 5 miles from your station, unless it's contracted with other fire protection. So examples of that, we have 2 areas of town that's outside of 5 miles from our district, which would be Lake Vista Development off of Malcolm Boulevard. So we have a contract with Lovelady for that, so they get our class 3 rating. And then the Settings is also more than 5 miles from us, so we have a contract with Triple Community, so they get our 3 rating as well, because they're within 5 miles of Triple Community. So how is it scored? So 10% comes from emergency communications, and we'll go into each of these in more detail. The fire department is 50% of that, water supply is 40%, and then community risk reduction is a bonus of up to 5.5 points. And then divergence is a negative impact based on the disparity between the water supply and the fire department. All right, so generally, this is directly from ISO. Generally, your insurance premium impacts. So you can see there going from a 10 to a 9 is about a 20%, from a 9 to an 8 is about a 7%. But once you get below a class 5, your homeowner's policy generally won't see any effects. Below a class 5, it's only for commercial insurance. And hear me out. This is not saying that if we lower our rate, it will directly be a 5% impact. That's up to your individual policy as well as your insurance provider. This is just general guidelines from ISO and what they generally see. All right, so like I said, we're a class 3. We receive 74.7 points. And we will go into each of these categories more in depth. But emergency communications, we got 9.1 points out of 10. Fire department, 31.44 out of 50. Water supply, 33.69 out of 40. And community risk reduction, which is the bonus points, we got 3.9 out of 5.5. However, since we had a much higher percentage in our water supply than we did our fire department, we have a divergence of negative 4.27 points. And that's how they came up with the total of 74.7. So going into emergency communications. So there's 3 different sections in that: emergency reporting, telecommunicators, and dispatch circuits. And I think it's fair to note that Burke County Communications, Burke County 911 Center is 100% responsible for this. Valdese Fire Department, Town of Valdese has nothing to do with this, but They do use a 911, a E911 system. They have plenty of telecommunicators, and then their dispatch circuits. They did fairly well. They got most of the points on all of their stuff. They got 99% of their total points. So moving on from that, we go to the fire department section. So engine companies, we currently have 2 engines, engine 1, engine 3. But but your ISO is generally based on 3 engines. So we have to count our 3rd engine on our automatic aid contracts. So we got 5.18 points out of 6. Generally that has to do with the equipment carried either on the automatic aid engine or with the training that we do with our automatic aid companies. Reserve pumpers, that's if you've got a spare engine sitting there with all the equipment on it, you get half a point. We don't have one of those or no room for it. Pump capacity, we have plenty of pump capacities. We got 100% of that. Ladder service, we've got all the equipment on our ladder trucks. We got 100% for that. We don't have a spare ladder truck sitting there, so we got 0 for a reserve ladder. And then deployment analysis, like I said, we'll get into each of these more in depth here in just a few minutes. I've got slides for each of them. Company personnel was by far the biggest one that we could improve on, and that was two things go into that. Number one, the number of people that you have on duty, as well as the number of people that you have coming back for specifically structure fires. Because ISO only looks at structure fires. They don't care about medical responses, fire alarms, anything like that, just structure fires. Training, we did pretty well on with 72%, and then operational considerations, we got 100%. So we can generally, I've gone through all of the ones that we didn't get 100% on, I've got outlined. So ISO rating, as far as apparatus goes, engine company, like I said, we got 5.18 out of 6. That's based on having 3 pumpers, but they allow us to include one of our automatic aid pumpers. And then it does require training with our automatic aid departments, which we have started doing a lot more of in the last 1.5 to 2 years. So that should go up a little bit. Reserve pumper, we don't have one. We're not going to have one. Reserve ladder, we don't have one. We're not going to get one. Deployment analysis. So deployment analysis, what that is based on is the number of, or the percentage of built upon area within your jurisdiction that is within 1.5 miles of a pumper and within 2.5 miles of a ladder company. How exactly they come up with 7.13, I don't really know, but that is solely what it's based on. Is the road is 1.5 road miles from the station for a pumper and 2.5 road miles from a ladder company. So, need for a ladder truck while we're talking about apparatus. So I've been directly asked and I've been indirectly asked through 3rd, 4th parties, do we need a ladder truck in Valdese? The answer is absolutely yes. So ISO, a ladder company is needed if the district has 5 or more buildings with a needed fire flow of 4,000 gallons per minute or more. We have, I know of 2 off the top of my head, and that is Bimbo Bakery as well as Kellex. And then 5 or more buildings that are 3 stories or taller from the lowest apparatus access. Well, that could be the hospital, medical office building, WSVM building. Most of the buildings along Main Street, on the north side of Main Street, along Bobo, because that's the lowest apparatus access route, or lowest fire department apparatus access, they have a basement and then 2 stories, so all of those would be considered 3 stories. Not to mention all the new apartment buildings that we have. Pine Crossing Apartments, there's 5 3-story buildings there, as well as Tron's Place that should be finished the next couple months. That's a 3-story building as well. So the answer is absolutely we need a ladder truck in Valdese to maintain our ISO rating. So, moving on to the fire department itself. So, fire department itself, or personnel, we got 3.41 points out of 15. So, in 2022, our on-duty personnel, and how this is calculated is the on-duty hours, the total on-duty hours divided by the number of hours in a year. So then we averaged, we had 1 person 24/7, and then with our part-time coverage 8 to 5, that gave us 4 40-hour-a-week employees. So put all those hours together, divided by the total number of hours in a year, that gave us an average of 1.95 people on duty. Well, currently, we're not really filling that 8 to 5 part-time shift, so we're at about 1.71 people per shift, or personnel on duty. And then the second part of personnel is on-call personnel on structure fires. So in 2022, the previous 5 structure fires, we averaged 8.4 on-call personnel coming. So they weren't on duty, they were on call, came back for a fire, we averaged 8.4. Right now, our last 4 structure fires, we're averaging 4.6 people, on-call people coming back. So that's just over half of what we had. So currently, if we maintain where we are and keep going down the same road, I could see us losing some points out of our personnel. And that's, like I said, due to reduced response from part-time people as well as our off-duty full-time folks, because most of them now have a second and third job as well. And before I move on, I'm gonna say we are not going to accomplish this. I don't think the fire department of New York accomplishes this, but to get full credit through ISO, it says you have to have 6 people on every engine and 6 people on every ladder truck. I do not expect to get that by any means. Like I said, I don't know of a fire department in the country that can say that they fully meet that. So if we went by that, Valdese Fire Department with 2 engines and a ladder would have to have 18 people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I do not anticipate that at all. I just wanted to put that out there in case anybody was wondering what we would have to maximize that. And then if we didn't have additional full-time folks or people on shift and we relied solely on on-call people, with our 1.71 people on call that we'd have to have 49 people on call at every structure fire to come back for every structure fire. So just so anybody was wondering what it would take to get full credit for personnel. So moving on to fire department training. Overall training, I feel like we did pretty good. Some of this we were able to use our people that do work elsewhere at fire departments full-time. We were able to bring their training in for this, and we're still able to do that to help out with hours. So facility training, that has to be done either at a burn building or a 3-story training tower. So we have to send people to Western Piedmont or Morganton, Shelby, somewhere like that to get those hours of credit. Company training, that can be pretty much anything. What we do around the station is training-wise, it all falls under company training. Officer training, if they are an officer within the department, they need 12 hours for maximum credit. New driver needs 60 hours of maximum credit, but like I said, that goes into our SOGs and requiring the driver operator certifications, so that all those hours count toward that. Our general drivers, our full-time folks, as well as our part-time folks that we allow to drive, need 12 hours of training a year for maximum credit. Hazmat, you need 6. And new recruits, for maximum credit is 240 hours through ISO. And then pre-plans, why they include that in the training section, I don't know, but we do 100% of our buildings. We update our pre-plans every year, so we get full credit for that. So just looking at that, the average firefighter driver, for us to get maximum credit, our average firefighter driver would have to have a minimum of 228 hours annually for maximum credit. Even for our part-time folks that are already certified firefighters, you're looking at a max of 228 hours. So do I see us getting 100% points on training? I don't, but I do see us increasing just because we document what we do a lot more. Moving on from the fire department to the water supply. So we got 33.69 points out of 40. So the supply system, we got 27.44 out of 30 points. So what's that is based on, whenever OSFM, which is the Office of State Fire Marshal's office, sends me a letter and says, hey, you're due for your ISO inspection in a few months. He sends me a list of buildings, generally the larger buildings in town, and it tells me what the required fire flow is for that building. So we have to go out, we test those hydrants, we see how much available water we have from the hydrant versus what the required amount of, what the required fire flow is. And that percentage is pretty much what that is. And then the hydrants, we got 2.25 points out of 3, so we got 75% on that. So hydrants, previously, they had to have a larger barrel than what our hydrants are. So the barrel's the part that actually comes out of the ground. Previously in ISO, when we had this inspection, to get full credit, you had to have 5 1/4 inch larger barrel. I don't know anybody around here that has that style of hydrant. Everybody that I know is a 4.5 inch barrel hydrant. But they took that requirement out, so as long as it has a 4.5 steamer connection on the hydrant, you get full credit for that. So we should get that other 0.75 point on that one, whenever it comes around. And then hydrant inspection and flow testing. So we do maintenance on our hydrants every year, every April, so that should start in a couple days, just to give everybody a heads up. So we get 4 points for doing the maintenance and that stuff, and that type of thing. Well, the points that we're missing is flow testing. So we currently do not flow test or mark our hydrants. So flow testing would be going out, turning every hydrant on absolutely wide open, reading the pressure off of it to see how much available water you have there. So if we did 100% flow testing, we would get 2.4 points, and then marking system, used to, you had to paint the hydrants different colors. Now we can use Active 911 and our records management system to make them different colors on a map, and that counts as marking the available flow. So that's a possible 3 points that we could get. However, we do catch a lot of flack whenever we just flush hydrants, so I would hate to say it would cause a lot of stir if we did go to flow testing. So we have not done flow testing. As long as I've been at Valdese for 8 years, we have never done flow testing, other than the ones that we have to for ISO, or sometimes a business will send us something specifically requesting it to do it for them to base their insurance and sprinkler system off of. All right, and then we get into community risk reduction, so the bonus points. So fire prevention and code enforcement, we got 1.88 out of 2 points, so that's 85%. The biggest thing with that one is the number of staff that we have. We don't have a dedicated 100% full-time person that only does that. His duties are split between the fire department and inspections. And then also to get full credit for that, they have to have 24 hours in fire prevention code enforcement. They have to have 24 hours of training every year in that specific field. Public fire safety education, we got about half the points for that, and the biggest one with that, once again, is the number of staff. We don't have dedicated staff to that. We all do multiple hats, as well as we weren't doing a super great job of documenting the programs that we were doing, so we have started documenting that a lot more, so we should receive more credit for that. And also, to be a fire life safety educator, for maximum credit, you have to have 10 hours of training every year. And the fire investigation program, once again, the number of staff, because we don't have dedicated people, and then it requires 40 hours of training per person for each of our investigators to maximize that credit. All right, so then we get to the last step, so the divergence. So divergence is based on either the fire department is limited without adequate water supply, or the water supply cannot be fully utilized without an adequate fire department. Therefore, credit totals are proportionally adjusted to balance the variance between the earned credit and the two categories. So how we get that is divergence equals 0.5 times the water system credit minus 0.8 times the fire department credit. So to the right, you can see how they calculated it for us last time. So 0.5 times the water system credit of 33.69 minus 0.8 times the fire department credit of 31.44. So currently our divergence is 4.27. So with that being said, we're class 3, we're 74.7 points, so we're a solid middle of the road class 3. So what changes have been made since the last inspection, because our next inspection is due this coming January. We've added some small additional pieces of small equipment to our engines to try to add to the little bit of points that are available on our engines. And then we've increased our training offered as well as our training documentation. Normally the first 3 Wednesdays of the month, I'm sending people to Morganton now to try to get facility training with the Morganton Department of Public Safety. We combine forces the first 3 Wednesdays of the month to try to get our facility hours up. We're doing more automatic aid training with our automatic aid departments, as well as increased documentation of the training that we do on shift. Okay. And then we're also, like I talked about earlier, we've really increased our documentation for public education programs. So that's all positive. The one negative is we are seeing fewer personnel, both on duty in our part-time 8 to 5 person not getting filled, as well as our engineer slot not getting filled, and also our reduced on-call people coming back for structure fires. Possible improvements that can still be made is increase on-duty personnel. We could start hydrant flow testing and marking them, and replace out-of-service hydrants, because that does have a very small percentage on our score. All right, so last but not least, the department needs moving forward, the 3-headed monster as I call it. So personnel, whether that our current personnel, increase pay and improve benefits, because what our folks are making versus what you see on job ads right now is two very different things. And then some form of career progression / merit raise programs for our people. Because right now, if you come in as an engineer, other than a cost of living raise, there's no raise incentives at all. So once you come in you'll be making the same thing the whole time you're here. There's no career progression or raise program. And then also potentially increase the number of personnel on shift. And then secondly, a new facility. So the current proposed facility that the floor plan is out in the lobby, it does address the safety concerns that we talked about. It does allow for room for additional personnel, and it also adds space for apparatus maintenance and training activities. And then the third piece is apparatus. We need to replace engine 3 pretty soon. It's 31 years old this year. And with that, the option is we can get a new truck to replace engine 3, or get a new truck and hold on to engine 3 as one of the reserve pumpers to get that half a point credit. That's just an option out there. My thought would be probably just replace it soon, because getting parts and pieces for it are becoming a problem, trying to find parts when something does break. Overall, the truck's in pretty good shape. It's just getting to an age where nobody carries parts for it anymore. And then also, in that 10-year frame, engine 1's probably we're going to need to start talking about replacing engine 1 as well, because it's 22 years old currently. So in 10 years, it'll be 32. And if it is the way it is right now, you're looking at 3 to 4 years from the time you sign a contract on a truck. It's 3 to 4 years before one's delivered. That's all that I've got. Is there any questions with that? I know that was a ton of information.
Council, any questions?
I went over my 10-minute limit, I know.
Yeah, you owe us on that. No, you did great. Thank you. It was very in-depth, but
Yes,
it was
sir.
appreciated.
You want, yeah, can we take a recess for 5 minutes, please?
Absolutely.
They can watch. Okay, let's continue. Item number 7B, presentation of the proposed pay study presented by Mr. David Hill. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My pleasure to be with you. I was last before you about 5 years ago, presenting a similar report. So what I'm going to present to you this evening is the culmination of about 6 months' worth of work. And I'm going to give to you a broad overview of the study. We'll talk specifically about some classifications, and then I'll speak to you about recommendations that came about because of the findings of that study. The study itself began in this room. I met with employees, and in addition to that, I met with department directors. We actually used that room over there for those meetings. But the whole purpose of a study like this is for me to gain and collect as much information as I can about each of your positions so that I then can compare those similar positions, or your positions to those similar positions in other local governments. Valdese is a very good example of employees wearing multiple hats. And as all of you, I'm sure know, the larger the local government, the more specialized employees are. The smaller the local government, the more generalized, the more hats everybody wears. There are a number of those in this room this evening. But why do a study? What is the expectation of this study? Is for me to look at all of this information and then come back to the manager with recommendations about, in my opinion, based on the data, the interpretation of the data, where I think Valdese should be to put yourself in a competitive market position. I'm not comparing you to those places that pay the highest. I'm not comparing you to those places that pay the lowest. I'm looking at a geographic area. I begin with Google Maps. I look at a geographic area of about a 1 mile or a 1 hour drive from here. Who are those local governments within this 1 hour drive? And certainly I'm not going to take a look at each one of those local governments. I need to have a good representation of those local governments so I then can come before you this evening and present information that gives a pretty good geographic area information. So the whole point is to bring back to you these recommendations that help the town in their recruitment, and you heard that from the chief, recruitment and retention. So again, the study, I met with employees. I told them that they would come this night, that I would stand before you with this presentation, with my recommendations. And I could only do so if I had their full support and cooperation. So as I met with them in this room, I told them that I couldn't stand here tonight and present that kind of report that they would expect me to unless they gave to me the information that I needed. That information that I needed from each of them was for them to complete a 12-page position description questionnaire. That's 12 pages of them telling me in great detail everything that they do, every element of their position, all of their duties, their responsibilities, their authorities. What percentage of time do they spend doing each of those duties, responsibilities, and authorities? I met with department directors, as I said. We talked about some issues from the last study. How's the market looking? How's the market changed? Who are those competitors? The chief mentioned some of those that we talked about. But just employees had 2 weeks to complete their questionnaire. That was intentional. I needed for them to take their time, think about all the things they do over an extended period of time. At the end of that 2 weeks, their supervisor or department director spent another week reviewing their responses to, again, just make sure that their employees were telling me all the information that they would expect their employees to tell me. And then I began collecting data, and we'll take a look in a couple of slides at who those local governments are that I collected data from. But I began that analysis of not only your workforce, but the workforce of this identified market that we'll take a look at. I then, based on my initial findings, my initial interpretation of the data, I came back and met with Todd, Bo, and Jessica. We looked at the data, talked about the data. We met a number of times. Came up with the final recommendations, which leads me here tonight's presentation. So, the full scope of your study this year, in addition to the pay and classification part, included a complete review of your personnel policies, and those are ongoing. We also surveyed the market and collected employee benefit information from each of those local governments. My purpose here tonight is to speak specifically about the market pay comparisons. I think, and Todd correct me, the personnel policy review update, the benefit survey data will be a budget work session discussion. So at the very beginning of the study, Jessica sends me a printout of all of your employees, their department, their job title. Every bit of information is public about them, which includes their pay, their employment date, the date that they started in their current position. So from that initial report, I developed my initial interpretation of the data and the workforce. Now, what you're seeing here is in a perfect world, and I continue to search for that perfect world. You will never see a distribution that looks like the bell curve, even though we studied that in school, and there is some expectation that the distribution of whatever the measurement is would look like that. But this is what I want you to keep in mind as the backdrop of what the distribution should look like of each of the data elements that we're going to look at. But in a mature workforce, my definition of a mature workforce is that you've got an average years of employment between 8 and 10 years. And if you have a mature workforce, and if the sample size is large enough, I should be able, in a perfect world, to find about 2/3 of your employees in the middle 1/3 of that distribution curve. So that distribution curve can also represent a pay grade range, with the entry-level salaries over on the far left side, the midpoint or the market value in the center, and the market maximums on the far right side. So the very first thing I take a look at, and first I must apologize. I have a technical inability to recreate bell curves. You'll notice my arch there does not look like a bell curve. So what I'm looking at right now is based on now all of the data that you're going to look at, and the next couple of slides is based on that initial spreadsheet that Jessica sent to me. So what we're looking at here, each one of those bars represents the number of employees who came to work for you and who are still employed with you in each of those calendar years. Now, this graph also is a good representation of recruitment and retention. You can see the high bars are on the left side. Those are the newest years, those are the newest employees. And I can tell you just based on historical data that if we follow those highest bars over the next 3 to 4 years, they're going to start looking like those much smaller bars. And that's just based on historical data. But looking at this data, and that St. Louis arch represents a 20-year career. So you can see to the right of that that you do have a number of employees who've been with you longer than 20 years. So based on this data that I've collected, your average years of employment is 7.15 years, which is just slightly below my definition of a mature workforce. But also represented by those bars is those employees who are no longer with you. So these bars that you're seeing are the number of employees who came to work for you in each of those calendar years. What is not showing is the number of employees who came to work for you in each of those calendar years who are no longer with you. And that's why, and I can tell you that this bar graph that you're seeing of yourself, when I do these kinds of studies for local governments across the state, their charts look just like this. So Valdese, in that viewpoint, is no different than any other local government in the state. But in the bottom left corner, you can see that you've got almost a quarter of your employees who've been with you less than 2 years. You've got over 50% of your employees who've been with you less than 5 years. So your average years of employment is 7.15. I then next take a look at how long have they been in their current position. And 4.99 is probably a good average across the state. When I take a look at how long employees have been in their current position, and a lot depends on career ladders, a lot depends on opportunities for advancement. An employee could be with you for 5 or 10 years, but over that 5 or 10 years haven't had an opportunity to advance. What I'm looking at in this chart is when did they go into the position that they currently hold. And you have 30% of your employees who've been in their current position less than 2 years. Almost 70% of your employees have been in their current position less than 5 years. Again, what I'm looking for here are anything that stands out, anything that looks unusual. This one and the one you saw before it, in my opinion, there is nothing unusual in these two graphs. This one, however, is unusual. And my very first interpretation when I see a graph that looks like this, when I took a look at the first one and the second one, and then when I take a look at this one, I typically see this one being a mirror of the first two, with lots of bars on the far left side. When I see this chart that you're looking at now, my initial interpretation of this is that your pay grade ranges are not competitive to the identified market, and you're having to bring employees into work at salaries further up in the grade range, further away from the entry-level salaries. You can see in this graph that you have no employees at minimum. You have no employees less than 2%. You have one employee whose salary falls in the less than 5%, and only 5 employees in the less than 10%. So basically, this is your pay grade range. Your pay grade range has a 50% range, which means that your maximum salary is 50% greater than the minimum salary. So in that 50% range, you have average salaries that are 19.61% above the minimum of their pay grade ranges. And again, this chart, to me, my initial interpretation of this, based on the first two, is that your grade ranges are not competitive. To get employees to come to work here, you're having to bring them to work at salaries further up in the grade range. So now we'll look at the data that either supports or refutes my interpretation of the data. So what we're going to look at are 3 different classifications. And these are 3 classifications that are representative of all of your classifications, each of your positions. And when you see the information for a specific classification that I'm going to show you tonight, each one of your positions, each one of your classifications has a worksheet that will look just like the ones I'm going to show you now. So I took a look at each one of your positions. I'm not going to stand here tonight and go through every one of those. But this is the market. So these are the local governments that I collected data from. Every one of your positions does not have a similar position in every one of these local governments. But this, again, a Google map search, who are those local governments? And what I'm looking for actually is where could an employee go to work elsewhere? Not that they would, but where could an employee go to work where they didn't have to move? All they would need to do is come out of their driveway tomorrow morning and turn left instead of right. Here, for the most part, are all of those places that they could go to work. And when I do my comparisons, there are no two positions in the state of North Carolina, the local government system, that are exactly alike. You would think that perhaps a manager is the same everywhere. They're not. You would think that a police officer is the same everywhere, but they're not. So I will always talk in terms of I'm comparing your positions to similar positions. And a similar position that is effective in the studies that I do is about an 85% match of primary duties and responsibilities. Knowing again that lots of employees who work for Valdese wear a number of hats. So the very first one we'll take a look at is a police officer. Now again, this is police officer 1. This is not sergeant, this is not police chief, this is not any other position. This is specific to this particular classification. And what you're seeing on this data, and I will spend more time with this one than I will with the other two, just because I want to explain to you the data that's on here, what it represents, what I'm looking for, how I use the data. But for this particular classification, police officer 1, everything above the blue line is the market. And what you see in the data above the blue line from each of these local governments for this specific position, what is the minimum salary that they have for that position? What is the midpoint? What's the maximum? So what I'm asking them to do is give me the pay grade range that you have that position in. In the column headed AVG, average, there is where I ask each of these local governments to give to me the salaries of every one of their employees in every position that they have. From that data, I then convert each of those specific classification data comparisons to annual salaries. So what you're seeing in that AVG column is the average salary of a police officer in each of these local governments. I then take a look at what is their range. The column that's titled CR stands for compa ratio. That's merely a relative position of where is my salary in relation to the midpoint of my salary grade range. And then measured differently, the next column, the percent greater than minimum, I'm just measuring where is that salary in relation as a percentage above the minimum of the pay grade range. So everything above the blue line is the market comparisons of those similar positions to your police officer 1. Immediately below the blue line is the pay grade that you currently have this position in, grade 17. It has a minimum of $40,708, a midpoint of $50,885, a max of $61,062. And at the time that Jessica sent me that report, your police officer average salary was $47,120. Immediately below your data is the average of all of that data above the blue line. So your minimum is 40,708. The minimum of the market's 49,848. Moving over to the salary, your average salary is 47,120. The average of this market is 52,904. Immediately below that, I'm measuring or determining what the median or the 50th percentile is. When you look at the percentages over in that far right, bottom corner, minus 10.9%, minus 9.5%. There's where I'm measuring your average salary to the average salary of the market. You're 10.9% below the average salary of a police officer in this market. 9.5% below the median or 50th percentile salary of the market. Then moving over to the bottom left side, you'll see two more percentages there. There's where I'm comparing everybody else's pay grade ranges to your pay grade ranges. And your pay grade range for this particular classification is 18.3% below the average. So you've got a pay grade range that begins at 40,708. The market average minimum is over 49, almost 50. The median is not too dissimilar from that. So if I'm looking at the pay grade ranges, you're 17, 18% below the market. If I'm looking at salaries, and again, that's just for this particular position, you're 9, 10% below the market. The grayscale column, titled 3%. There is where I'm projecting where the market data is going to be on and after July 1st. So what you have below or above the blue line is everybody's current data. The column, the 3% column, is where I'm forecasting or projecting where I think the market data is going to be on and after July 1st. So from all the data that I've been able to collect, 3%, and that's a combination of cost of living, performance, some other kinds of adjustments, but probably the average is going to be about 3%. So if I'm looking at your pay grade range, which currently is 17, 18% below the market, on and after July 1st is probably going to be an additional 3% below the market, because the market, again, based on my projection, is going to increase an additional 3%. I then take a look at the market data, where it is now, where I think it's going to go, and now I'm looking at what pay grade range should I recommend that this position be in, so that it will be in a competitive position on and after July 1st. And your current pay grade range, 21, puts this position in a pay grade range that puts you in a very competitive market position on and after July 1st. In your pay plan, and we'll take a look at that in a moment, between each of your pay grade ranges is a 5% differential. So to put this in perspective, you're looking at a 4 grade, that's a 20% movement, moving a position 4 grades. But you can see that your pay grade ranges are already right at 20% below market. Looking at fire engineer, and again, I won't go into the detail that I did with the first one. But looking at the pay grade range, your pay grade range is 16.7% below the average 17.4% below the median. If you look over at the bottom right corner, salaries are 13.8% below the average, 13.3% below the median. So just like with police officer, when I look at this position, and again, assuming a 3% adjustment in the data on and after July 1st, I'm recommending this position move from its current grade 16 to grade 20. Another 4-grade movement, 20% movement. Water treatment plant operator, C, and C is that entry-level position. The state classifies them C, B, A, with A being the highest. A lot of local governments just call them 1, 2, 3s. So here where you see a C over on the right side, that's that entry-level position for those local governments. Where you see the 1, that's that entry-level position for those local governments. But for water treatment plant operator C, again, you're in that 16, 17% differential measuring against the market average and median. And over on the bottom right side, that again, 14, 15% difference in actual salaries. So these are the only 3 that we'll take a look at this evening. Every one of your positions has a worksheet that looks just like this. So when I took a look at each one of those, and you saw what those 3 looked like, but when I took a look at all of your positions and how they compare to those similar positions in that market, on average, your pay grade ranges are 14.1% below the market average. Your employee salaries are 10.3% below the market average. So your pay plan, and again, I spoke about it generally, but you've got a 50% range, again, which means that your max salary is 50% greater than the minimum salary. There's a 5% differential from one grade to the next. In those highlighted pay grade numbers at the bottom, based on my interpretation of the data, my findings, my recommendations, you're going to have a number of positions that are going to be moving up that would exceed where your pay grade ranges max out. So what you're seeing in the yellow or the highlighted area are my recommended additional grades to add to the high end of your pay plan. Now, with that said, there may be an opportunity to eliminate some of the pay grades at the lower end. So my recommendation is to keep those for now, but there probably will come soon an opportunity where some of those lower grades are no longer effective. So my recommendation, and we'll talk about recommendations in a moment, but my recommendation when I get to that point is to maintain your current structure. The structure is good. The 50% range, the 5% differential, it's just the addition of those 6 or 7 or 8 of grades. So again, based on about 6 months worth of work, meetings, discussions, excellent input from employees, supervisors, department directors, my recommendations for you tonight are to consider adopting the recommended pay plan. And that's the one we just looked at with the additional pay grade ranges. And then just like the 3 classifications we looked at, my recommendation is to assign each one of your positions to the pay grade range that is supported by the comparisons to the market data. And then regarding employee salaries, And this goes back to the comp ratio model, that column that we looked at. Where is my salary in relation to the midpoint? You have an average years of employment of over 7 years. Again, my definition of a mature workforce, 8 to 10. The midpoint is perhaps a target to look at. But my recommendation regarding employee salaries, and in the next slide, we'll take a look at what the mechanism of that. It recognizes both an employee's years of service and time in position. So it's not a system that places any employee at a disadvantage. An employee could have been with you for 10 years, but just last year took a promotion or was moved to their current position. So now I've got an employee who's been with you for 10 years, but they've only been in their current position 1 year. So the recommendation gives credit and recognition to years of service and time in position, and is designed that an employee's salary would be at midpoint of their range in the 7th year of either their years of service and or time and position. Now, what does that look like? So this, on the far left side is that comp ratio model, but all it is below the bell curve. I've just laid it on its side, where you can see that an employee who's a brand new employee, their salary would be somewhere at or near the minimum. Now, this is not your current minimum. So remember, we're talking about perhaps a 15, 20% movement of the position. So a brand new employee would come to work at the new minimum, which is now the market competitive minimum. Remember the third slide that we looked at the very beginning, where all of your salaries are moved further away from the minimum. So then there's a mathematical value attached to time and time and position and years of service, that in that 7th year, that employee's salary would be at midpoint. This also is a mechanism to take a look at salary compression. This, again, provides greater recognition of years of service and time and position, and creates some separation between longer-serving employees and employees who are relatively new. So what you're looking at here now would be the implementation cost. This is the total of all of your funding sources. So in salaries, those adjustments would equal $541,000. In addition to that, there's about a 27% payroll associated cost. That's the FICA, the retirement, and those other payroll associated costs. That would be about $146,000. Total implementation cost would be a little over $687,000. Now, and again, this is the total adjustment. This is without regard to funding source or anything. And these numbers will fluctuate up till the very moment that implementation takes place. Employees will leave, new employees will come, employees will change positions. So just based on the data that we have with us this evening, what you're looking at now would be the implementation cost. So with that said, with that probably too hurried, I again appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight and look forward to answering each of your questions.
Council, you have any questions?
I guess I'm wondering, you highlighted police and fire, I think, on your,
Yes, sir.
but you did include in that Parks and Rec, Public Works.
Every position, every department,
Okay. Or no.
every employee has a worksheet like that you've just looked at. To include the manager.
I'm not included.
I collect data on every position.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I personally asked him not to include me in this because I didn't want y'all to think I was trying to do something for me.
I have the data if you would like to see it.
Yeah, please.
I don't care, but you probably don't want to see it. So that council can follow along, we have already included this in start of our budget process. When it gets to council, you'll see the salary, schedule. You'll see the new salary schedule. You will also see a breakdown by department, because in those numbers not included part-time, because we are up in part-time salaries as well. And the benefits and all that will be more, broken down by department so you can see more of it. Mr. Hill, has been doing this a long time, and I think, the way if he went into every single department, we'd be here to midnight. So, me and Jessica and Bo and him have been working very hard on it. And then, it will be part of, unless the council tells us not to, we're going to include this as part of our budget presentation to council, fully funded, at the rate that he's recommended.
And a follow-up to your question, and I apologize, when I got to your pay plan, I do have what the proposed pay plan would look like, and it shows you what pay grade range I've recommended for each position. And Jessica has those that she can hand out this evening.
All right, council, I'll entertain a motion to direct staff to include funding in the FY 2026-2027 budget to support the recruitment and retention efforts.
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
So these recommendations will be in the budget that you present in April, or at our work
Yes.
day,
And
From
you'll see
there-
them all. So you're not voting to implement, you're voting for us to
Right,
put them into
include in there,
into
and
the
then if we
budget
have to,
recommendation.
discuss and make further decisions. That's what we did, okay.
Good. All right, all in favor, please raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Hill, thank you very much for your
Thank you.
time and your service. Thank you. Okay. Next on the item, next item on the agenda is the public hearing on the right-of-way closure for Fayette Street Southwest. Since this is a public hearing, I will now declare this meeting open for public comment. Mr. Rapp, will you please make your presentation?
Yes, sir. Good evening, Mayor, Council. This hearing is for a proposed right-of-way closure over on Fayette Street Southwest here in Valdese. So the right-of-way is approximately 160 feet long by 26 feet wide, and this portion of right-of-way has never been opened, improved, or used for vehicular and pedestrian purposes and does not serve a current or future public transportation purpose. Here is that area identified on a map. So you see as you're coming down Fayette Street into the curve towards Praley Street Southwest, it is almost originally intended to be like a T-shaped intersection that has not ended up happening after it was planned back in the 20s, I believe. So the required steps for council to close this right-of-way, or deliberate over whether to close it, is council would adopt the resolution of intent and call for the public hearing. This happened on February the 9th. That resolution must then be published once a week for 4 consecutive weeks prior to this hearing. A copy of the resolution needs to be sent to all owners of adjoining property of the street or alley, and a notice needs to be prominently posted in at least 2 places along that street or alley. After those occur, the public hearing occurs, which is the step we're at now, and then council may or may not adopt an order to close the street or alley, and that would then be filed with the Register of Deeds. So here's that resolution of intent that was adopted in here on February the 9th. Here is the mailing requirement being filled. So mailings were sent to all those properties in the pink on the right-hand side, and then proof of the mailings is on the left. Inside that mailer was information about the right-of-way closure, information about the timing of the public hearing, and attached was the adopted resolution and a map outlining the area. Newspaper advertisement, like I said, once a week for 4 consecutive weeks. That was March 7th, 14th, 21st, and 28th. And you can see the advertisement on the right. We have a lot warmer weather now, as you can see, but signs were posted and continue to have been posted leading up to the hearing. And then coming to the public hearing aspect of this, where council will be able to deliberate about the closure. So the statute does provide us some guidance on what council should consider. It provides 2 things. Those 2 things are that any person may be heard on the question of whether or not the closing would be detrimental to the public interest or the property rights of any individual. Second, council shall be satisfied that the closing is not contrary to the public interest and that no individual owning property in the vicinity of the street or alley or in the subdivision in which it is located would thereby be deprived of reasonable means of ingress and egress to their property. So, yeah. Following this public hearing, if it were to be approved, if the closure were to be approved, the council would adopt both an order of closing and along it would be a retention of utility easements. Here's that order of closing, and here's that retention of utility easements. There's some municipal infrastructure beneath the right-of-way, and this doesn't at all stop us from closing it, but just to protect town infrastructure, we would adopt this declaration of utility easements along with the order of closing and notate it in the motion. But it allows the town of Valdese to retain all existing and future utility easement, both public or private, whether they're within, upon, under, or above the portion that's being closed. So that's really all I've got for you to present. If there's any questions, if not, the public will have their opportunity to be heard.
Any questions? Oh, okay, thank you. Next, is there anyone here wishing to come forward and speak with regard to the right-of-way closure? Seeing none, hearing none, we will now close this public hearing. Council, you've heard the comments regarding the right-of-way closure. Do you have a motion?
I make a motion to close the right-of-way that's been described.
We have a second.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. What else? Is there something else?
Mayor, yeah, you'll also need a motion to adopt the declaration to reserve
I
utility
always
easements.
know, you always threw a curveball on me.
I make a motion to reserve the
Utility easements.
utility easements for this right-of-way.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, discussion on that one. Very well. All in favor signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
It's nice, everybody's got a smile on it.
Okay, well, I guess this next one would be Mr. Wackel. And this will be the approval of the resolution for upset bid process, right-of-way closure. Go for it.
All right, so on this right-of-way that was just closed by council, we do have an offer on the half of the portion. So when it gets closed, half goes to one side of the property, the other half of the right-of-way goes to the other side of the property owner. Being that the town owns the adjoining property on the one side, we do have an offer for that portion of it. It is about 13 feet wide and 160 feet long, 0.05 acres, so not much space there. There is no appraised value for the land because it was a right-of-way. So we do have an offer for $500 for this section. We have received a required bid deposit on that amount. So the process to go through like we have in the past with these offers is to authorize the upset bid process first. It'll be advertised for 10 days. If no upset bids are received, then at the next town council meeting, council can consider a resolution for authorizing the sale of the property. So it's important to remember, we're not selling it at this point, we're just authorizing upset bid process.
Very well. Thank you. Thanks, Bo. All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion to consider the resolution for authorizing the upset bid process.
So move.
So moved. Do I hear-
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I guess this is my turn. I will now bring to your attention the following appointments. We have reappointments to the Drug and Homeless Task Force. Recommendations include the appointment of Kimberly Wilson and Officer Sean Link to serve on the task force for the upcoming year. If approved, they will fill the vacancies created by the departures of Annette Skidmore and Sergeant William Beck. The task force also recommends the reappointment of the following current members to serve an additional 1 year. Reverend Josh Lell, Chief Mark Sharp, Mark Queen, and Councilwoman Heather Ward. At this time, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Very well. All in favor signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next, one other appointment to the Valdese ABC Board. Assistant Town Manager CFO Bo Weichel was previously appointed to complete the unexpired term of Chair of the Valdese ABC Board while serving as interim Town Manager. That term is set to expire on April 1st of this year. The ABC Board recommends the appointment of Town Manager Todd Herms to serve as Chair. If approved, this appointment will carry a term expiring April 1st, 2029. I will entertain a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by raising your right hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. All right, Mr. Herms, we're at your point.
Yes, we see the light at the end of the tunnel. The town manager's report, we have numerous events scheduled throughout the month of April. A calendar, event calendar is included in the reading material for your review. It's also, on various social media outlets as well as our website. It's for the public's notice, the members of Valdese Town Council will be attending a town and state dinner in Hickory, North Carolina on April 1st, 2026. A quorum of council may be present, but no town business will be discussed. This will be dinner with our state representatives, along with every other city in the region. Town offices will be closed on Friday, April 3rd in observance of the Easter holiday. The annual town council budget retreat is scheduled for Tuesday, April 14th, 2026, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the community room in Town Hall of Valdese, right across the way. Members, another attention for the public, members of Valdese Town Council will also be attending the annual Western Piedmont Council of Government annual meeting in Hickory on April the 16th, 2026. A quorum may be present as well, but no town business will be discussed. Town council will be there with all other elected officials from the Unifor area. A fiscal year 26-27 budget presentation for council is scheduled for Monday, May the 11th at 5 p.m. in this council chambers in this town hall. Our next regular scheduled meeting is, for council is Monday, May the 11th at 6 p.m. in this council chambers in this town hall.
Thank you. All right. Item number 9, council comments,
I have some.
please.
So this evening, there was a Burke County Public School Board meeting that we obviously weren't able to attend. So I did just have a statement that I'd like to make. I wanted to speak today regarding the proposal of the integration of Halliburton Academy into Drawn High School. I'm here not just as a concerned parent, but as a citizen. I care deeply for each student, family, and the community, in our community, that this decision will impact. Halliburton Academy serves a critical purpose. It provides the structure and a supportive environment for students who often face behavioral and academic challenges and need a different setting to succeed. That environment exists for a reason. Simply placed, those students into a traditional high school setting does not eliminate those challenges. It shifts them. My concerns are centered around safety, discipline, academic impact, and the strain on the community's resources. First, safety. Parents send their children to school each day trusting that they will be in a secure and stable environment. Integrating two very different student populations without a clear, detailed plan raises real concern about whether that sense of safety can be maintained for all students and staff. It also raises concern about the potential increase in incidents that could require involvement from our town's first responders. More calls to Drawn High School means additional strain on law enforcement and emergency services, resources our community depends on every day. Second, discipline. Alternative schools operate with different expectations, structures, and supports. Bringing those students into a traditional high school setting risks overwhelming administrators and teachers who are already working hard to maintain order and consistency. Without the proper resources in place, discipline issues could increase, affecting the entire student body. Third, academic impact. Teacher-to-student ratio will inevitably increase with Halliburton students absorbing into Drawn High School as a proportional increase in staffing. Large classroom sizes mean less individual attention, more classroom disruptions, and fewer opportunities for students to fully engage and succeed. Students who are there to learn, prepare for college, and enter the workforce deserve an environment that supports focus and achievement. At the same time, students from Halliburton deserve the specialized attention that helps them succeed, attention that may be diluted in larger traditional settings. This is not about labeling or excluding any group of students. Every child matters. Every child deserves the right environment to succeed, but one size does not fit all. And removing a system designed to meet specific needs risks failing everyone involved. Beyond the school walls, this decision will ripple through our community. It affects family, confidence, teachers, retention, and public safety resources, and the overall perception of our schools. These are not small consequences. I urge our council to take a look at how this affects our town. Ask the hard questions and to ensure that this decision is being made with a full understanding of the long-term impact, not just for today, but for the future of our children and our community. Because once we change the foundation of our schools, we don't just affect one group of students, we change the experience, the safety, and the opportunities for every child who walks through the doors. The decision has been tabled from Burke County Public Schools until April 27th. Please reach out to your board members with questions about funding they do not propose to send any extra funding, and the safety and why this has never been presented to the public for discussion. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have something
Yes,
as
ma'am.
well. I just wanted to acknowledge the passing of a previous fire chief, Ernie Bertolot. His services were today. Ernie was fire chief from 1988 to 1998, but had been with the fire service in Valdese for decades, I think since the 60s. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because he was a fine individual and a fine servant to the town of Valdese.
I'd like to give a shout out to the Old Colony Players, our local theater group. They did a production of Cinderella the last 2 weekends. It was outstanding, and so I hope if you get a chance, their next production will be our outdoor drama from this day forward during July and August. So please support this local community theater at the Old Colony Players.
And I just want to really quickly put a little plug in again, please, like you did last, y'all, so many people sharing last month's meeting, getting the word out about what is happening, the state of the department. For the police department, do the same for our fire department and our parks and rec, our tourism, anybody who has gotten up here and done a state of the departments, make sure we're sharing that. So when it comes time for the budget, people are understanding kind of what we're looking at, so they can give their input. More than anything, they'll understand, and they can, I'm really urging citizens, please, come to the meetings, get involved as much as possible. And I just want to say thanks, speaking of citizens, to Kimberly Wilson and Officer Link for joining the task force. I look forward to working with you starting tomorrow. So.
Good. I know it's been a long night, and I won't make haste to that. I just want to thank everyone who shows up at these council meetings. We highly encourage the public to come, and if they can't, please, those who are watching, please stay tuned and be in touch with our council proceedings. It means a lot. This is your town, this is your council, and we're a reflection of it. Thank you, council. At this time, thank you, audience, for coming tonight. Council, I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session pursuant to North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11A3 to consult with an attorney to retain by the town in order to preserve the attorney-client privilege between the town attorney and the town council, which is privileged, is hereby acknowledged, and North Carolina General Statute 143.318.11A6 to consider qualifications, competence, performance, character, fitness, conditions of appointment of individual employee.
So move.
So moved. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. All in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you, folks. Okay, we will now reconvene in open session. We have a matter of a motion to approve the grant, I can say that, grant authority for the town attorney to negotiate. Did I make this right?
Yeah, so the motion will be to grant the town manager and town attorney authority to negotiate the development agreement with the county on the Bluffs project, and then to authorize the mayor to execute that agreement upon approval.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor signify by raising your hand. Say aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay. Now do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Adjourned.